So we learn in 1 Samuel chapter 17, verse 25 that um, David hears of great rewards and great riches for the man who kills Goliath. And then again, David does more research and more verification in verses 26 and 27. So David asked again to confirm, what the rewards were. So what he's doing is he's validating the opportunity. He's clarifying what the compensation is going to be, and he's not operating on assumptions. He's getting the confirmation, and he's getting it more than once. So David verifies the offer with multiple sources. He does his back end work, and then he wants to ensure that the contract is real and not hearsay. So, just like we need to do in our businesses today, as David was conducting his business, he made sure that he verified through multiple sources. So as David was deciding, what he was going to do, um, Eliab, David's brother, rebukes him and questions him about his motives for asking these questions. There were internal resistances over. He had to overcome a internal resistance with his brother here, and basically innovators face internal resistance before the external threat. So understanding that, you may be rebuked by people that you love, but as you are going into the market, understand that there will be resistance. So what does this teach us, about, David's brother and how he handled things? So David, he ignored this distraction. He turned from him and towards somebody else. Remembering that in business. Stay mission focused despite the criticism. So no matter what criticism comes, stay focused on the mission that's at hand. And not every voice is qualified to speak into your assignment. So understanding that everybody is not even qualified to understand or speak into your assignment. So David has to be brought to Saul, first in 1 Samuel 17, 31 through 37. And David is brought to Saul, and he presents evidence on based on his past performances on why he is able to accomplish the things that he says that he's able to accomplish. So let's take a look at those. So in chapter 17, 1 Samuel chapter 17, verse 31, it says, "And when the word was heard which David spake, they rehearsed them before Saul, and he sent for him. And David said to Saul, Let no man's heart fail because of him. Thy servant will go and fight with this Philistine. And Saul said to David, Thou art not able to go against this Philistine to fight with him, for thou art but a youth, and a man of war from his youth. And David said unto Saul, Thy servant kept his father's sheep, and there came a lion and a bear, and took a lamb out of the flock. And I went out after him, and smote him, and delivered it out of his mouth. And when he arose against me, I caught him by his beard, and smote him, and slew him. So David's letting Saul know, look, I've already faced giant things, and I not only killed it, I not only smoked it, but I delivered it out of the hands of the enemy, as I planned to deliver Israel out of the hands of the Philistines by the living God. He said that thy servant slew both the lion and the bear, and this uncircumcised Philistine shall be as one of them, seeing he had defied the armies of the living God. So David was confident that he would be able to smite the uncircumcised Philistine. One, because he had already faced great battles of great warriors like lions and bears before, but also he knew and believed that if you defy the armies of the living God, then you've already signed your death sentence. So he was already confident. And David said, verse 37, David said, Moreover, the Lord that delivered me out of the paw of the lion, and out of the paw of the bear. He will deliver me out of the hand of this Philistine. And Saul said unto David, Go, and the Lord be with you. So David convinced Saul that he was going to be able to do this, that he had a competitive edge, something that we need to look at today. So David presents his case. He had killed a lion, he killed a bear. God delivered him every time. So his resume was solid, you know, and your resume is what you've actually done. It's not what you claim to do. So making sure that your resume is solid. And then, so David positions himself as the only qualified candidate by referencing his past wins, his transferable skills, and his reliance on divine backing. So these are the reasons why David knew that he was going to win. So this is a pitch meeting that David presents flawlessly to Saul. So uh, Saul says yes, and Saul puts his armor on David, uh, but David rejects it in verse 38 and 39. So what can we learn from this? So not every tool and methodology, fits your calling, and you cannot win, wearing someone else's strategy. So understanding, be authentic and reject, misfit solutions, the solutions that don't fit. So David teaches us that David tests his armor. So before David decides to go to war, he tests the armor out. He declines what doesn't align with his proven workflow. David already has a strategy that he uses. He already uses rocks and slings. So this doesn't align with his proven workflow. So he chooses tools that maximizes his unique advantage. So David has a unique advantage in this situation, and instead of going into battle with Saul's armor, the king's armor, he decides to use a unique advantage that he already consists of. So this is a lesson in authentic operational design. Making sure that the operational design that you're structuring, that you're building, that you have is authentic. So let's talk about David gathering the five smooth stones. And as he's going into battle, he tried out um, the armor, and the armor is not for him. So he decides to go with his staff, and his sling, and the smooth rock. So David gathers five smooth stones, and he takes his staff and his sling. In verse 40 tells us this. So what is the business principle here? So we have to acquire the right resources in proposition to the mission. So requiring the right resources to make sure that we can get the mission done properly. Um, and not excess. So just what the strategy requires. You don't need excess. So what this teaches us is that David identifies the minimum viable resource needed for maximum effectiveness, and he chooses resources that matches his skill set as well. So in verse 41 uh, of 1 Samuel chapter 17, David approaches Goliath. Goliath mocks him, and David declares his mission and the source of his authority. So let's take a look at that. So, and the Philistine came on, and drew near unto David. And the man that bare the shield went before him. And when the Philistine looked about and saw David, he disdained him, for he was but a youth and ruddy, and of a fair countenance. And the Philistine said unto David, Am I a dog, that thou comest to me with staves? And the Philistine cursed David by his gods. And the Philistine said to David, Come to me, and I will give thy flesh unto the fowls of the air, and to the beasts of the field. Then David said to the Philistine, Thou comest to me with a sword and with a spear, and with a shield. But I come to thee in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom thou hast defiled. This day will the Lord deliver thee into mine hand, and I will smite thee, and take thine head from thee. And I will give the carcasses of the hosts of the Philistines this day unto the fowls of the air, and to the wild beasts, and to the wild beasts of the earth, that all the earth may know that there is a God in Israel. And all of this assembly shall know that the Lord saveth not with sword and spear, for this battle is the Lord's, and he will give you into our hands. So every battle that we face, it belongs to the Lord, and he will give our enemies into our hands. And it came to pass when the Philistine arose and came and drew nigh to meet David, that David hastened and ran towards the army to meet the Philistine. And David put his hand in his bag and took thence a stone and slang it and smote the Philistines in his forehead, that the stone sunk into his forehead, and he fell upon his face to the earth. And David prevailed over the Philistine with a sling and with a stone, and smote the Philistine and slew him. But there was no sword in the hand of David. So David approaches Goliath. Goliath mocks him, but David declares his mission and also his source of authority. So, what is the business principle that we can learn here? So, your brand messaging must be clear. Who are you? What are you doing? And why will you win? So, David made sure that he knew and understood all of this information. So, this teaches us that uh, David articulates a target outcome. He said, I will strike you down and take your head. He has a strategic purpose that all the earth may know that there is a God in Israel. And then, the key differentiator between him and Goliath is that the battle was the Lord's and the Lord was on David's side. So this is vision casting, if you will. This is not boasting. David knew and he understood things that helped him to win this battle. So David ran towards the battle. Think about this when you're making executive action decisions, and you're trying to do them with precision. He strikes Goliath with one stone, and the giant falls. So, decision plus speed gives you an advantage. David made a decision, and he acted on it as quickly as he possibly could. So, buyers reward bold actions. So, what does this teach us? David, he moved quickly. Move quickly when you're making decisions. David uses his tested skills. He used skills that he already knew worked. A lot of wealthy people, we use the skills that already are working for us, that have already been tested. Executives executes clean and efficiently. So you need to execute things cleanly and efficiently. And this is how you have a high performance operation. So once David secures the victory, David, he eliminates Goliath using Goliath's own sword, and he removes the head from Goliath. So what does this tell us? So after the win, secure the proof. After you win, after a win, secure the proof so that you can be thankful for it. This teaches us that David ensures the victory is undeniable. He makes sure that he cannot be denied the victory because of his high performance operation. He acquires tangible evidence of his success, and he finishes what he starts. So, how does this impact the market or territory expansion? So, Israel pursues the Philistines after they. So after David smites Goliath, Israel's armies pursue the Philistine armies in verse 52 and 54. They plunder their camps, and David brings Goliath's head back to Jerusalem to Saul. So a single breakthrough can create cascading opportunities. So David shows us here that one breakthrough created a vast amount of opportunities for Israel. So you don't need a million breakthroughs, you just need one. This teaches us that victory inspires confidence in others. So when David beat Goliath, it inspired confidence in all of Israel, so much so that they were willing to pursue the Philistines. A win, it expands influence and territory. So David's influence expanded, his territory expanded. And then David understands brand storytelling. He displays the head uh, as evidence of God's power and capability. So this becomes, David's brand when he stands before Saul. So leadership recognition and, corporate interface. So Saul inquires about David, and David is brought before him. So Saul must now acknowledge, David's identity and his lineage. So what does this teach us? So success draws attention from powerful people. And, be prepared to articulate who you are when you get there and you get before them. And this should teach us that, David's work, it introduces him to a king. And because he was not fearful like everyone else. And every major breakthrough introduces you to a new table. So I hope this helped. I hope that you learned something about David and also some business principles that you can get from this story. Crisis reveals a market gap. So that was the crisis in Israel that revealed a market gap for David to exploit and basically, win for Israel. Before entering into any fight, know what incentives are available to you. David checked more than once to make sure that what the offer was actually legitimate, that it was a real contract. Be innovators when you face internal resistance before external threats. So innovators face internal resistance. It's just the way that it is. And face those before you face the external threats. And don't fall into the distractions, don't fall into the criticism. Not everyone is qualified to speak into your assignment. And your resume is what you've already actually done. It's not what you claim that you can do. So David wasn't bringing things that he did bring things that he had already done, and not things that he claimed to do. He said he killed a lion, he killed a bear, he could kill Goliath. Those are things that he actually did. So not every tool or methodology fits your calling. Not every tool. You can't use everyone's armor or everyone's strategy. You cannot win wearing somebody else's strategy. You need the strategy that God has given you. Acquire the right resources in your mission, and not excess, just what you need that's required. So David didn't need all of this armor and all of these things. He got what he required for his strategy, and he used those things. Be clear on who you are, what you are doing, and why you will win. Understanding the target outcome, the strategic purpose, and the key differentiators. That is how you vision cast. That is how you really understand who you are and what you are. Decision plus speed equals advantage, and buyers reward bold action. So move quickly. Use the tested skills that you already have and execute cleanly and efficiently. And then after you win, secure the proof. Secure the proof that you won. And then a single breakthrough. Remember, a single breakthrough creates cascading opportunities, and not only just for you, for everyone around you. So victory inspires confidence in others. A win, expands influence and territory, and, just understanding those things. And then, he displays the head as evidence, God as evidence that he can do this, and that God can do this for him. And remember, success draws attention from powerful people. So be prepared to articulate who you are.